All right, so names.
My name is Roshni
All right.
Advani. I'm Jessica Bananas.
Sulema Batilano.
Jesse Arabic.
Maria Abrazini, and we are group 1, right?
Group Zion.
There you go. There you go. We talked about the myth of Sisyphus was the reading, and the 4 main topics were self-reliance, reflection, love and romance, childhood and the past and death.
Yeah.
Right? And in reflection and self-reliance, the 4 key right, were the value of error, criticism and cultivation of way of growing, attitude, the values expressed, change, and openness. And the 2 songs were Ballad of Noah and Antenna.
Yeah. So, well, Antenna by Zion Antenna by Zion definitely ties into the reading about Sisyphus because he's choosing his attitude, and the lyrics really do reveal his attitude. And in the reading about Sisyphus, the significant part is that Sisyphus is able to choose his attitude about having to go back to get the rock each time. So it's really important that it's showing that you can choose your attitude about different situations.
So let's talk about really quick the myth of Sisyphus. So basically he's getting punished by the gods because supposedly he stole some secrets, right? He was in prison in Tartarus and all that kind of stuff. And somewhere along the way he tries to test his wife's love, and she fails miserably.
As they do in most myths.
He's the guy though. Anyway, we digress. Okay, so he asked if he could be sent back to chastise the wife, and then he'd come back, right? Well, he goes back and says, I love her too much. I don't want to go back. Years pass. Mercury returns and grabs him and sends him back to the underworld. First punishment of the rock. Now, the emphasis of the myth is really about the turmoil of him pushing this rock up this hill or slope. And just before he gets to the top, the rock falls and goes right back down. When he turns to look at the rock to go down, the rock go down, right, is the moment that everybody seems to be discussing, right? Camus talks about. It's that never-ending toil of pushing the rock, going back. So what are his thoughts when he turns, right? It's that moment. And that's the moment that you were talking about, Roshni.
Right, exactly.
So it's that moment where we all make our own choice of how we're going to think, how we feel,
How we approach it.
How we react to the
Yes.
situation that we're
Right.
in.
That don't leave it to the gods to decide.
Right. Well, the act itself is the punishment, and that's what the gods are saying, right?
Right.
But what part of all of that is his own?
Right, so the only part that's his own is, no matter what, he definitely still has to go down the hill and push the rock back up again, but the only part that he can choose is how to interpret that and how to go about it. And I think the point of that was that your only choice is to choose how to interpret your own life.
Well, your acts are yours.
Right.
Your thoughts are yours, and I think that's what they were saying. At least that's what the professor was making the distinction, was that that's what makes him victorious, right? Because it's those thoughts.
His own perseverance. It's like
Right.
he chooses his own direction of whether should I get it or not.
Right.
In his own feet. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
He's saying that leave that to men.
Right. Yeah, you're the man, so we're going to talk about spine.
Don't persecute.
So that's what Roshni was talking about in the Ballad of Noah, right? And I think in the first verse, the professor was clear about talking about how the singer talks as they see the error and that they want a new path. They recognize the error, and how then that recognition is followed by criticism, right? And then they see the progress, and ultimately in the last verse it's about the beliefs are true or false, right?
Right.
I thought the second verse was especially interesting just because it's like he's directly taking from the Genesis and he's talking about the heavy load that the rock's going when he tries to keep going, weakens the knees, and and how like even though it's like it's really hard for him to still keep going with his perseverance, self-reliance kind of thing. So that was really interesting. He just like directly goes within it.
Well, he wants to feel brand new,
Yeah.
right?
Actually, after every verse, he repeats that.
Yeah.
Like, even after this, I still want to feel brand new.
Yeah.
That was just a reminder.
Yeah, and in both songs, they're coming from a place of conflict and pain, trying to decide what they want their attitude to be like.
So do you think he's actually talking to God? Because that's what something she had brought up, is he talking to God, asking for forgiveness?
I think he's just contemplating, like, through all these problems, but I don't think he's asking for forgiveness or asking anything toward God. It sounds like he's asking himself. At least that's how I see it. Every time he mentions a problem, he goes back and says, make me feel brand new. I mean, he could, the way he says make me could be interpreted as asking God for something, right? But he never specifically says, you know.
He didn't say God, but I think maybe in the theory of who he's talking about. I just thought it was interesting when she said, do you think he's talking to God kind of deal. Sometimes we talk to ourselves, right? It's like, we gotta do this better, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, but he is valuing change, right? To do something, not to wait.
I guess it's just telling the audience, like,
We tell him what they think,
Yeah.
what he thinks, right?
Right.
So then who's the audience do you guys think?
Oh, he is a songwriter.
I mean, I just think that, like, who despise others, like, somebody screwed somebody over, then they're gonna be pissed off the whole time. But it's just like, he's saying, like, just forgive them, it's not gonna have a burden on you.
Yeah.
I think it's for those people that always are jealous or wanting to see someone fail to make themselves feel better.
Yeah. Yeah, it shows that he values change, and I think the main, even though he might be talking to God, the main point of the song is that he's reflecting upon himself and that he wants to do better and he wants to feel brand new. He might be asking for help from God, but I think he definitely is just trying to take more control of his own actions or reflect upon them.
Which kind of goes to what Camus' ultimate thought process is in reading of the Sisyphus is the attitude, right? We talked about how it's the attitude is essentially what you can control. You can't control the outside. It's how you deal with the outside. That's the moment, right? The moment of the rock turning when he turns.
Right.
Do you think he's like saying all these problems and making himself like, I'm not gonna be pushed down by all these problems. I'm not gonna be drowning with all these problems, jealousy, envy, the globe is getting hotter, can't find water. Like these problems constantly exist, but he's just like, I'm not gonna let myself be drowned by this. Right?
I think that's his way. That's maybe his conviction of wanting to stand up, for himself and realizing the negative and trying to say, this is who I'm going to be. This is who I choose to want to be.
Pushing himself forward.
I think we can all agree on wanting to do that in school, right? I mean, yeah, right? Wait, how long is this? Right?
Yeah.
Those are our choices, right? Want to go on to love and romance?
Yes.
All right, so the songs for love and romance is Lost Ones.
Lost Ones by J. Cole and You Never Know by Immortals.
I really like the one that I to me. That was really good.
Which one?
You're more to me.
Yeah, they were
It was
both
really good.
songs.
It's just really weird listening to all the underground music compared to what they were later.
I know.
It's like
that's
so
what I thought about J.
different.
Cole. I was like, what? That was one of the songs where he really like blew up after that song. Yeah.
Actually, you can see a lot of the hip hop, how much it's changed. It's definitely changed.
Especially for like Kendrick Lamar, like,
Oh,
his
he's
songs
bringing back some
his
of
songs are
those.
so raw because
Yeah.
like his latest album is talking about like being and stuff. So J. Cole
This is where he's talking about.
about like a story of consequences of like what if
Fears,
someone is
right?
telling a lot of fears.
Let's see.
Well, So it comes down to really one person's wanting the other one to stand up, right? Because she was in it for the long haul. She had the feeling, she thought they were on the same wavelength, and then all of a sudden they get thrown a curveball, and she comes up pregnant, right? And so his whole thing is, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Let's think about this. And then it's the friends, right, who start throwing in all this outside stuff that we talked about, right, from before. So all these outside questions and that lead to doubt. So he had let those questions seep in, and now he had all these doubts about, well, is it true what she said? Am I the only person? Wait, will not be mine? All this kind of stuff.
Right, and I think the title as well, the title Lost Ones, doesn't necessarily only have to do with abortions or anything, but also is talking about himself, and it's an aspect of self-reflection, because he is lost in the song. He doesn't know how he wants to. He doesn't know how he wants his attitude to be. He's confused about, we had all this great stuff going on, and all of a sudden this happened, or should I listen to my friends who are telling me to doubt you? So he's lost in himself as well.
I have to say, I didn't even really think of it from that viewpoint of the title. So that's pretty sweet that you
Yeah, I
did
kind of
that.
thought of it that way, yeah, like Lost Ones. No, but I mean, she reinforced it even more.
Yeah.
I mean, she even feels like, even she feels lost after this, right? Even she feels lost.
It's because of the doubts that he
Yeah,
made,
and
right?
because of a lingering question. So
Yeah.
you don't know what happened at the end.
Because he never got his answer from her.
So they do feel lost because the female was like, well, if he doesn't want this, like, am I going to be on my own? How do I approach this, right? I mean, she's on her own, she's lost. In terms of like, if he doesn't go along with this.
Either way, I mean, I think that was my discussion with the professor in class, was that either way, she's still going to raise the kid. She's still going to go down this road because she was raised by a single mother. I think the question is he going to be part of it or not? Right? I think that was kind of ultimately the thought.
Right.
But my thought on how she broached the title itself, Lost, I didn't really thought of him as being lost. I didn't think of that. I really didn't.
Just like she
He's
said,
lost.
I think
He's lost.
Well, I'm just thinking he's kind of, everything was great when there was no pregnancy, but all of a sudden here comes real adulthood, here comes some real life decisions and choices, and he starts backpedaling. That's kind of how I
I
see
didn't think
it.
of the title that way until his friends were the ones like, hey,
Yeah.
it's not yours, maybe it's another guy's. And that's where I started saying, oh, now he's going to be confused. Like, now he's not going to know what to do.
Yeah.
Well, it's like a broken family after this. Like, even if she does keep the baby, it's a broken family. That's why she's so upset, right? That's why
Because her mom wrote.
she doesn't want that.
She doesn't want to be like her mom and being a single parent.
Like you said, she can do it, but it's like she doesn't want to do it.
That's right. That's why so she might even be considering that if she leaves him.
Well, right, and the song also, the girl points out to J. Cole that how are you going to come to me talking about abortion when your own family went through this and you were raised without a father, and you're kind of repeating that cycle. So he has different pressures, some from his friends, some from his girlfriend, and some from his his own past where he grew up without a father and he doesn't know. And he doesn't necessarily want to repeat that, and he's saying that's not the type of person I am, to just get a girl pregnant and leave her. So he's absolutely
But yes, that's kind of what was happening a little bit with the friends' input, right? So, which is one of the things that we were talking about in lecture was the feelings of torture.
right.
And so, how do you bring that into with the myth of Sisyphus? I think because with Sisyphus, there's one outcome, right? She's got to do the rock, no matter what.
Yeah.
Right? And so in here, how many outcomes do you have? 3, right? Stays, leaves, or abortion.
Yeah, is the different because he has possibilities and he has doubt, which kind of penetrates his mind and kind of tortures him. Actually, it's the other way around, actually, because of the possibilities that he has to choose from, and he doesn't feel he's ready.
Do you guys remember the quote from Oscar Wilde? She talked about the letters that he wrote from prison I do remember she was talking about
He's
how.
talking about pain and pleasure.
Oh, was it about, maybe, you came to me to learn the beauty of sorrow, was it that one?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that was it.
I particularly like that quote, it's like right there.
I did this chicken scratch, so I couldn't really read it. I just thought maybe I'd grasp it from when she sent out that next.
The
The
recap
recap
thing.
Yeah, the quotes,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
I can.
I thought that was especially, like you said, very.
Profound, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it.
It kind
It's not-
of really it hit right. It kind of hit for you. It really
Yeah.
signified something. So that was kind of.
Right.
And you can definitely tie the song back to that as well, because it's all in the way, in his perspective, he's gonna like, stay with her or not, and it's if he thinks they can do it or not kind of things. It's all like a perspective kind of thing, and it's a very terrible situation. It's a sorrowful situation if whichever he leaves or goes, or she keeps it or not. It's difficult, and he says the course, like, I cry about it sometimes with bloods, but in the end, it can be something beautiful. So I can kind of see why the Oscar will tie with that.
Right. And also, I think both of these songs, You Never Know by Moral Technique, as well as Lost Ones by J. Cole, are also about self-reflection as well. In the song You Never Know, especially in the video, you can see that he has grown up and he's still reading that letter that he got from the girl, and he's saying, you never know what can happen. He's really reflecting upon what happened in his life and what happened with that girl. And maybe his own personal regrets and shortcomings as well, and talking about how you really do learn. You only learn by making mistakes.
Well, so let's talk about You Never Know, since you're talking about that one, right? So this song is about the gal that.
She had AIDS.
Right, she ends up
She had
dying,
AIDS.
but he doesn't know that, right?
Right.
So this is the gal that everybody thinks walks on cloud nine,
Yeah.
is what everybody wants to aspire in the neighborhood, right? And he ends up falling for her, and she decides to keep it platonic,
Yeah.
right? Which kind of,
enriches the relationship for him.
it really does, because he now sees her on another level that they had already placed her, right? So here's the gal that is smart, she's pretty, she's
Driven.
she's driven, she's
She's caring, right?
caring,
She doesn't
carry
care.
conversation,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
And then all of a sudden, he tries to go one step further and not make it platonic, and then all of a sudden she's
It's
pushing away, right? So I think for me, this was the hard part of the song. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Why would you, because I'm not that kind of person, why would you walk away not wanting an answer, or at least being satisfied with the direction it's going to go?
You can get a pride or anger.
Yeah. But he walked away from.
Everything he ever wanted.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Perfect. I mean, really. So why would you give up that easily? Okay. So, and again, this is me because that's not who I am. So I'll say, well, what? I'll push it even more. I mean, like I tell my boyfriend now, it's like, dude, here's the thing. I will speak, because the longer you lay something there that needs to be talked about, the worse it gets when it really isn't that bad if you've dealt with it, right? It festers. Perfect, right? So he walked away.
Right. Well, also though, in his lyrics, he also does point out he did walk away because he felt that he had no other choice. He felt rejected, and even then he walks away from her, but he goes down a completely different path. He talks about how he got arrested. He found himself doing things that he would never do before. And finally, one day he decided to come back, and he found that letter that she had left for him. So, I don't know why he left her. Probably because he felt rejected.
Because he didn't want to go back to feeling that pain again or feeling that.
But I think she called it. I think she nailed it when she said it was pride.
I think it was a little bit of pride, but also just because, like you said, he couldn't live without her, and I guess the way I see it is that she said no to him. She said, well, now I have no other option. She was the one for me. I have nothing else. He turned cold, and
So do you think he already had doubts of insecurity or a
I
lack
think
of.
so, definitely,
And
because
then-
like earlier in the song, they talk about how she was, she was above a lot of the other women in the neighborhood, and that all the other women envied her, and so all the time she wouldn't give him or anybody else the time of day. I think, wouldn't you stop to talk to the average kid?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he felt like it was really hard to be, to get close to her at all until she
He
finally.
never thought he was good enough.
Exactly.
Maybe it wasn't even pride, it was about how low he felt.
Yeah, because it's all insecurity.
Yeah.
And he had worked so hard to be with her as well. He had been completely different. He talks about how none of the other guys that tried to talk to her would treat her properly, and he never tried to, touch her or anything. He always was trying to have conversations with her, and he always treated her well. And so also, he talks about just feeling completely rejected at the end. At the end, when she rejects him, he feels thrown out. He talks about how he has sex with other women, but he has no emotional feelings towards them. He's not fulfilled without her.
Sorry.
That's okay, it's true, it's true, it happens. That's what happens. That
Yeah.
happens.
I think the one quote here that he sings is forever changing the expression of my thoughts when I speak. She did that for him, which I think that's what gave him the confidence to think that he could be with her, right?
Right.
Before she kind of said no to the physical aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, should we go on to the depth?
Yeah. So for Death, we had I Hate You by Kendrick Lamar and what else?
The Gates.
The gates.
The
Gates,
Gates.
yeah.
I couldn't even look
Yeah. So the song The Gates talks about how death is not necessarily beyond us, and it's very real, and we don't have a reason to fear death. He definitely confronts, he goes through a confrontation with the gates of hell throughout the song.
Well, let's talk about this, what the song is about. So the song is about, we think, he is somehow involved in protecting the public, right? So that could be a fireman, it could be a police officer, or a street officer, right?
Right.
And how his wife passed away, right? And ultimately, it's about him passing away. Is that right? I mean, is it that end of the line?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was confusing, yeah.
Yeah.
And about how is that fair?
Right, and he's also reflecting upon his life and how he treated his own children, and then he talks about how when he is faced with going to hell, that going to hell they remind him about all of his shortcomings with his own daughter and make him, discuss his family and
then being a mixed race, correct?
exactly, yeah. And having a daughter who was of mixed race, who
So I gather he's,
I believe,
White.
no, I think the wife is white, because it says, unlike being less tried with a white wife.
Yeah, that's the white wife.
So she's,
Wait, where is that?
if you look on the right-hand side,
Yeah.
in the deacon section, a mixed race queen.
Oh, on the left being last try.
Crazy. Okay, so I totally read that wrong then. That's interesting.
I was trying to figure that out too.
Yeah. That came out of nowhere to me when they started talking about race during the song. We're just
So do you think the song's about race, about racism?
I think it's a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, actually, maybe the underlying theme about
Yeah, right.
the consequences.
I hadn't really thought about that until we started talking about it.
and talks about how there's a line where he says, "How dare you paint me as a racist?"
Right.
And how he's dedicated his life to serving the public, and he reflects upon how he could have taught his daughter more about race or the advantages or disadvantages that he had given her. by being of mixed race.
Yeah, he says, I've endangered my own safety to save babies from blazes. Like white, Latino, even Asian on occasion. Ooh, she talked about, in lecture, I remember her talking about how it's really about, to some extent, a surviving the loss of a loved one, a spouse, and how to deal with death. But it's interesting that in just listening to us talk here, about how racism kind of starts to kind of come out on this,
Right.
and the issues that.
Yeah, I think he also was trying to tie in that no matter what your race is or how you lived your life, death is not beyond anyone and everyone has to deal with it, and that's how he starts reflecting upon his own loss of his wife, and then he talks about his own death as well, and he reflects upon his life and the life that he had given to his daughter.
It sounds like he's angry.
Oh yeah, he sounds angry.
Right?
He says, how dare you paint me as a racist after all of the things that I've done for the community. I've saved people of different races and stuff. He talks about how he served his own community.
So why do you think that's an issue?
I don't even know how that came up in the first place. He's like, well, why? Like, what's your motivation for saving these people? Like, well, because it's his job. Like, that was the first thing I thought. Like, I had never taken into account that it had to have anything to do with, his own
Personal beliefs?
personal beliefs or prejudices against, other, like, races, because his daughter did have a mixed child. Did I read that right? His daughter also got pregnant? They're on the very top of the right-hand side. Later had a mixed baby at her sweet 16.
Right.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and he's talking, and I'm
like learning right now.
I know,
This is a confusing song.
Yeah, and then he goes to hell, and he's hell extends their hand to him, and he gets angry because he has to reflect upon his own choices and about how when his own wife died, he had to be a single father and how hard he worked to be a single father and to raise his own daughter, and then he's angry because he's talking about how his own daughter had to face that same fate.
Interesting, Tom.
Yeah.
I still don't get what he means by the gates.
And he talks about his seed.
Oh, well, the pearly gates, like the gates to heaven.
Oh,
Yeah, that's, or I guess the gates of hell in this point, in this case. And that I thought was really interesting was, Lord knows you look behind scorched souls, black children left chilling, later found burnt whole. I thought that was very strange.
I like the last one, sentenced to 5 fires for eternity.
And it just like ended so abruptly as well.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's.
So I guess he is a farmer. All right, so what do you think about these two songs in regards to Sisyphus?
It's an interpretation or like a challenge of interpretation of his own life. So it's like his direction of how he wanted to go about his struggles, basically, I think.
And so
This is like, what was it? That's just all my thought.
Oh,
Go ahead.
So I guess like, would you be able to say that the figure that was talking to him was like basically telling him that he, like, the way he dealt with his struggles was wrong? Is that what he's telling him? Because he said that his like motivation was wrong, the way he handled his daughter's like situation was wrong. Is that what he's like saying?
For me, I think it's about what his real motivation was. His motivations was for other things versus his own internal,
Sense of right and wrong.
yeah, he's saying like other people are like questioning his approach, questioning his like vanity, right? Like,
We're going to tie in the last two songs in the section of childhood in the past. My Life and Papa Was a Player. My Life is essentially a 14-year-old girl who is on her own, invariably is a prostitute, it sounds like, because of the money and into drugs. Talks about the struggles of being on her own.
Being a woman as well in a society where men are dominant and
There's
there's
judgment.
hypocrisy with gender stereotypes as well. And talks about her reflecting upon her own life. And also we talked about how the two songs, My Life and Papa Was a Player, are very opposites in that they view their lives completely differently. And Papa Was a Player, he chooses to have a positive attitude. Although his father was not necessarily the best father, he chooses to view all of the positives about what his dad gave him and what he taught him. While in My Life by Foxy Brown, she talks about how all of the struggles that she's faced in her life and all the problems that she's faced and all the things that have held her back. And she also ends by talking about suicide and wanting to end her life.
So one of the things that was interesting that we discussed earlier was how the theme, how she intertwines the movie Thelma and Louise, and so we talked briefly about ultimately the struggles of the two women in the movie, of things that they experienced, which is kind of similar to what she experienced in the song, which she's talking about in her own life. And
it almost follows the same kind of route where one of them is successful, i.e. maybe the wife is more from Thelma and Louise's wife, because she got married, she had a bit of a more normal life besides her husband. And at the end, they both end up talking about suicide, talking about dying.
right.
So it kind of goes through the same.
So we're all talking about how, what a crazy
Coincidence.
or not
Illusion,
coincidence.
I guess would be what a great illusion.
Yeah, she's already showing how
It's a very
she
illusion.
wants to end her life. It's kind of, rather than be stifled in this box of criticism and judgment like you talked about,
Yeah.
and how we talked about.
She's also like stuck in the cycle. She repeats it like, just like daddy. She
Right.
gets stuck with
Yeah.
the same man, just like the father.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And then ending it with suicide.
Right.
She doesn't want to live that life way. And yet, Papa was a player, he's choosing to really talk about his life as a child and what he learned by his dad. I know we talked about the difference in the opinion of choosing to see his dad as a good father but a bad husband. I chose it to see in denial because he doesn't want to see the pain of his mother, the how he really wasn't there as a husband, only as a father during a certain time, right? We talked about just at the young part. But then he leaves as an adult, and we talked about how is that a good example?
And I agree, just like as just drowning out all the pain to have like a semi-perfect life, I guess.
Right, and he also chooses to ignore all the pain that his father gave to his mother throughout his childhood. He chooses to ignore that.
Which is what I was talking about.
Well, I also think it's why it's so interesting, right? He says Papa was a player. Like he says, like maybe my father wasn't around, but he did teach me how to survive the streets. That's basically what he's saying in mine, and this is how I see it. Like he's saying, like, well, at least he taught me this on how to survive in this environment, this habitat. Even though I'm denying this pain, and maybe I'll use this pain as a positive.
Right.
Even though he's totally in denial.
It's just kind of interesting that they're both individual pains, right? That they're both experiencing this pain. And in lecture, she was talking about Oscar Wilde also, The Beauty of Sorrow, The Outcome of Pain, and then she brought up Nietzsche, right? So in Nietzsche's writings, he's one that pain helps us thrive and fear is the mother of morality. So it's the motivation, right? It's in order to make yourself a better person for the community, you have to focus on yourself. And this is kind of what they're doing. They're focusing on themselves, on their own personal struggles. However that kind of comes out, right?
Yeah, they both just like self-life, they approach it. They decide their own fates on how they want to approach it.
To tie this all in with Sisyphus, she was talking about pleasure and pain, color our lives and affect how we understand ourselves, family, community, and then the burden of freedom. It's your responsibility to make your own choice. You live your choices, right? You make your choices. And that's kind of in retrospect of all the songs. They were all choosing to see one thing, deal with one thing, and want to do something.
Right, I think all of the songs are a story of self-reflection, in which each of the artists choose different ways to view their own lives and have different attitudes. I think also one of the main points of the whole lecture was just how to identify and deal with a person's own struggles and how to deal with what we could call the burden of life, which would be the same thing as what Sisyphus had with the burden of having to push the rock up again and again each time. And I think the main point is that you can no matter what, you can always choose to have a positive or a negative attitude, even if you are condemned to push a rock up.
No matter
Yeah, over and over.
So Camus, what she said is Camus is, you can only control your attitude.
Oh, the absurdity of, was it the absurdity of life? What it was?
Yeah, well, we all live an absurd life, and it's our choice to choose how we deal with that.
So, yeah, it was kind of an interesting tie-in to all these songs, huh? I would have never really thought so.
Yeah.
I think all-
Yeah, the struggle is
I think
real.
all the songs are like an education-based songs where the speaker wants others to relate to them.
Or to educate
Or to
them about
educate.
what they're going through.
And saying, hey, you're not alone.
Or like cautionary tales as well, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as well.
Or like, you never think that it's going to happen to you, but it can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Never say never, right?
Never
Yeah.
know.
You never know.
You never know.
Right,
You never know.
know.
Never say never.
Right.
All right, guys.
All right.
Good talk.
Very good talk.